Hey guys, what's up? It's me, MC Matador, and today I'm bringing you a bit of an interesting video. This one's a little more personal. I do apologize for not uploading for the past 2 weeks and change because the week after I uploaded my last video, I had to have surgery on my foot, so I spent the next 5 days recovering from that, and then I should have uploaded this last Friday, you'll see why. But I was, well, super lazy and coming down from foot surgery and getting back to work where I was swamped. And then I should have uploaded this yesterday, but I just decided I didn't. I've really just been kind of dropping the ball. YouTube, once again, has been taking a back burner because it's summer, gotta help around the house, gotta do work. I've been sleeping in a lot more because sleep is awesome. But I'm here on this Saturday, and this fine Saturday night, because it's pretty much like what? It's 9:30 basically when I'm recording this. Um, I'm just recording you this top 10 amusement park days in my career. I want to take a time to look back at some of the best days in my career and my entire history as a coaster enthusiast. Why? Because from when this video was supposed to be uploaded, the June 5th, which was the first Friday of the month, I would have been in the midst of my road trip to Six Flags Great Escape, which would have been the prior day on June 4th, and Six Flags Great Adventure the following Monday on June 8th. I was going to be visiting these two parks as they were two of the parks that I was most looking forward to visit in my career, especially Great Adventure. The whole point of the goal was to go to Boston and see my second cousin. His daughter was graduating high school, and the whole family was going to make the effort to see him instead of him coming out to see us for since a lot of his family lives here in Chicagoland. So this trip did not obviously did not happen because of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. And instead of just being, oh, woe is me, I didn't get to go on my trip. I'm super mad and upset. I decided to take a bit of a time to reflect on 10 of my favorite theme park visits in my career, dating all the way back to 2010, a decade ago. So the reason I'm a coaster enthusiast is for days like these. Fantastic days at theme parks riding coasters to my heart's content. And with this out of the way, I want to start presenting some of my 10 favorite days at amusement parks in my entire career. This goes back all the way for past a decade. I've been riding coasters for a decade. More than that if you count my home park expeditions. But today at number 10, my visit to Six Flags New England in July of 2016. My first time I ever visited Boston to go see the same second cousin whose daughter was supposed to graduate when I was going to Great Escape and Great Adventure. The only really major problem is that it was very hot outside. It was excess of 90 degrees and rather humid. So it was a pretty miserable day, but I managed to cope with a bunch of water. And I got to spend valuable time with my second cousin, his teenage daughter, the one who's supposed to be graduating from high school, and his friend who also was in a music group. So just spending that time with them was very memorable. And the standout coaster was getting several rides on Wicked Cyclone, which is an absolute standout coaster and by far my favorite coaster at that park. And his daughter, obviously, my second cousin's daughter, wasn't huge on coasters, but we enjoyed riding the Scrambler together, among other things. My second visit with him, and only him, my second cousin, back in June of 2018, was not nearly as good. It had some issues with operations. It was less personal. Like there wasn't as much just interpersonal fun going on. It was just a visit. It's almost like business, kind of when we were visiting so many parks. Some of them just feel like business rather than enjoyment, but not in this case. My visit to New England in July of 2016, my first visit to New England, or Six Flags New England, was one that I'll likely remember for a long time. Number 9 is my trip to Cedar Point in June of 2010. This is the first ever time I left the state of Illinois to visit a theme park, or an amusement park. I had left Chicagoland to go to the typical Chicagoland resort destination of Wisconsin Dells, because I was a child who was looking for a lot of wet thrills. Just water slides were one of my favorite things growing up, and I've since moved on to roller coasters. And this was kind of the area where that started transitioning. I was only 9 years old when this trip happened, and I will be doing something special for the 1 decade mark coming up pretty shortly, probably by the end of the month. I was an anxious wreck. I was super excited. I was super, I was impatient. I was a complete mess. Everything of anticipatory anxiety for being at one of the places I'd seen on TV so much really just docks from the overall experience. I was not in the right mindset. I was a nuisance to the rest of my parents. I was too controlling for such a small child. And current me would have definitely slapped the piss out of past me just because of how impatient and much of a nuisance I was back then. But I did cross a major milestone here too, as I gained the confidence to ride my first ever hypercoaster, Magnum XL200, which also has been the prompt of several essays I've written throughout my career, including a college essay for creative writing. This visit was legendary in my early coaster career, and like I said, it's impactful for me to this day. And like I said earlier, we're approaching the 1 decade anniversary mark of being on this trip. I have been to Cedar Point 5 more times after this trip. I think it's 5. I might be off one in either direction. I think it's 5. It could be, or 5 more plus this. So 6 total, could be 7. And of course, other rides that I got to really enjoy. I really enjoyed doing Raptor. Raptor was my favorite coaster at the time, and was until a future visit. Like Raptor was super good. Being able to ride things like Iron Dragon, Disaster Transport, Cedar Creek Mine Ride, Gemini, and Magnum being a big fish. Going to the water park because I was still into that stuff and staying at the Great Wolf Lodge and all that. It was a great visit, but definitely one that more sticks out kind of is like, did I really act like that? But still, like I said, very much impactful to my coaster career and really helped me become the enthusiast I was today. Number 8 is Kings Island. I can't remember exactly what month it happened. I think it was July, but it could have been June of 2017. This was a great day at one of my favorite parks ever. My second favorite park just behind Cedar Point. This was my second visit to this park. The first one coming in 2015, and it was just me and my little brother looping around and riding everything at least once, with the better rides being ridden a few times. Beast, Diamondback, Banshee, and our favorite of the trip, Mystic Timbers, which was brand new at the time. It definitely resulted in a lot of waiting, but everything went pretty well, as it was not a terribly busy day, especially with looming rain in the forecast. And rain did happen, because it did have a steady rainstorm come in at about 4 p.m. after, about 4 rides on Mystic Timbers, 3 rides on Mystic Timbers, and plus 2 rides on Diamondback, and 2 rides on Beast, and 2 rides on Banshee, and one ride on everything else, basically. So the day did end prematurely, but we left after that. I also had to compensate for my little brother, because my little brother is definitely like, I will not ride a coaster for the credit if it will hurt me. And I was like, okay, Vortex isn't that bad. It might look janky, especially it might remind you of one of his least favorite coasters in Viper at Six Flags Magic Mountain, but it was definitely I don't think it was that bad, and it was bad. So I owed him a Coke at a local gas station, or I think it was like a cherry Coke or like a freaking Dr. Pepper or something, or whatever it was. I had to get him a bottle of soda at the local gas station as like, hey, I'm sorry for making you ride that. We made a bet that he would like it, and he didn't. But that was honestly just memories, and I know now that I don't mess with him by trying to drag him onto coasters I know will likely be bad. Which that probably would have been most of Great Escape's lineup, to be honest. But yeah, and we did go mini golfing later that evening to make up for it. And I also shanked a ball into the parking lot, so that was fun. But the external memories of this trip that happen outside of the park don't count. But 2017's Kings Island trip was about as simple as it gets. Just 2 bros, just going around the park, riding everything they can at least once, and just going on their favorites multiple times, having a meal in between, and just generally enjoying the low crowds. It was a good day. Meanwhile, my dad was over hiking in the Ohio River Valley, since Cincinnati's really close to that. But yeah, it was overall a really solid trip and a good weekend spent. Also, enjoying Cincinnati chili is always a treat. Moving on, we have number 7, Six Flags Great America, December 2019. This visit to me has become extra special because this was the last time I ever visited a theme park before the COVID-19 pandemic struck. This was a holiday in the park event, so the operations were limited. But what made this day great was there were some really good things that happened this day that just made it, that were just circumstance. First, for December, late December at that, the weather was super good. This was the weekend before Christmas. And it was 45 plus degrees. It was sunny earlier in the day, and then the night fell, and it was still super warm. So I brought a brand new winter jacket and everything, but I didn't even need it for a good chunk of the day. And everything that could run 2 trains was running 2 trains. So everything was hauling. Raging Bull was running the most aggressive I've ever seen it in a decade of riding it. The airtime was out of this world. They even had the second trim on, for Pete's sake. They never have the second trim on anymore. The airtime was absolutely amazing, and those are some of the best rides I've ever gotten on my favorite coaster in my home park. And Batman was also hauling too. But since the line for Raging Bull was 20-30 minutes apiece, I just chose to re-ride Raging Bull, as well as going to see the Christmas lighting ceremony and seeing the light shows and walking around the park and taking in the ambiance. Oh, and to mention, I was also alone at this as well. I was alone because it made up for a rather disappointing visit. I went on my actual birthday, which fell on a weekend prior to this, and it was definitely kind of bad. I brought a friend who dressed like it was going to be October, and it was his first time to holiday in the park, so he didn't know what to prepare for. And I brought my mother, who is terrible with the cold. Like, her definition of wearing shorts for the first time is being in Vegas in the summer. So it was just a bad mix. I only got like one ride on Raging Bull, and it was also like 10 to 15 degrees colder than it was on this visit. It definitely was disappointing. I barely convinced them to stay for the tree lighting, but yeah, it was definitely a disappointing visit for my actual birthday. But then going alone, just convincing them that, hey, I want to have a grand finale. COVID wasn't even on my mind at this point, but I really wanted to close the season off on a high note, and it closed off on the highest note possible. Like, I can't think of anything that went wrong that day. If only I could have stayed later into the night. But even then, I was pretty dang close to closing time already. Just, this trip was absolutely fantastic. And, I mean, I probably have had some really good visits to Great America, but unfortunately I have a hard time pinpointing them. And this will be the only Great America entry on this thing. Other visits to Great America that really became memorable were May of 2019, where I got to go backstage on one of the shows that I was really the only one in attendance of. And one of the actors had personally invited me up to it was not on a stage, but area. Fright Fest in some indiscernible year was basically just me and a bunch of other teenage boys running around and causing havoc, and we also pulled 4.5 Gs, roughly, on Terror Twister 2, to where I couldn't even hold my neck up straight. Other Fright Fest visits with just the boys were super good, taking cousins, taking friends. Great America's just a happy place overall. But some visits that really stuck out to me. And obviously my visits were like maybe the first one I ever rode Raging Bull, the day where I rode was a season pass holder preview for X-Flight and Goliath, which was just super good. But this was probably my favorite visit to Great America possibly ever. It was just good all around. The one where I got the backstage visit back in May really made it a good time as well. That was close. But this one was a little better than me because it was running so well. Moving on, we have number 6, Cedar Point of May of 2013, going all the way back to a time where I wasn't even a teenager. This trip is legendary in my extended family. It was me, my same little brother, I only have one sibling for reference, my father, my newly wedded uncle, and his 2 stepchildren, also known as my cousins. We spent an entire day riding everything I could muster up the courage to ride, which included first rides on some top 5 coasters of mine. Millennium Force, my then favorite coaster until a later visit would dethrone it, and Maverick, which is still a super excellent ride to this day. It was just me and the boys and my family hanging out, joking around, riding excellent roller coasters. My cousin got shat on in the head by a seagull. Everything was awesome. Most everything, because I was apparently still also an anxious wreck, because it was only my second time to Cedar Point. The drive there was hell because we drove in the middle of nothing, Ohio, because we decided to go to a restaurant in Indianapolis because that we saw on TV, which was good. And I also didn't put on sunscreen the whole day, and I was wearing a tank top, so I became a lobster for about 2 weeks. But other than that, this trip was awesome. I also, unfortunately, we had to divide at the end because me and my younger children, my younger cousins and brother wanted to ride Gatekeeper, but the adults wanted to ride Top Thrill, which I couldn't muster up the courage for. I eventually rode Top Thrill in a list that's not on here, but I'll mention it sooner. Number 5 is Kentucky Kingdom of July of 2019. Probably one of my most introverted coaster days ever. besides days at Six Flags Great America where I'm just going for a routine visit to just ride some rides and see the shows and eat some food, just make advantage of my season pass. I was briefly with my little brother and little cousin who took the hotel shuttle with me, and they got all the credits. They decided they did a couple other things, and they left. Then I stayed because I called the hotel's shuttle separately. So I looped back and forth from Storm Chaser and Lightning Run, both top 15 coasters. I got about 15 rides on them combined, and was probably one of the nerdiest and most CE-oriented days in my coaster career. My body was not happy with me at the end of the day, though, because like I said, with 15 combined rides on Lightning Run and Storm Chaser, I sustained an unhealthy amount of negative G's, to the point where my body was kind of just, it felt like my organs were in suspension, and I slept well that day. I slept very well afterwards. Also, combine that with unlimited free Pepsi Oasis, because they were doing out-of-state promotion. It was a good day. It was hot, so I had to drink water, but that's expected for Louisville in July. It was hot, but everything else went right. I just wish I could have gotten some more rides on Thunder Run because it was pulling a massive queue, only running one train. Moving on, we have Cedar Point. The greatest visit to Cedar Point of my 6, I believe, maybe 7 visits. This happened in June of 2018. This time around, I was with, again, my little brother, but this time I brought around my best friend from middle and high school. He had been to Cedar Point once prior, maybe a year or two before this one, but he had to deal with his parents and his little sister, who were not as keen in riding things and didn't get to do things he wanted. And also had to, I don't know, just his parents are kind of weird. So me and my friend had just finished our junior year of high school, and he actually got approval to come with us as a CP. It was originally going to be just me, my little brother, and my father, who would spend the day at the Cuyahoga National Park, but we were super pleased to know that my friend's parents let him come. And the entire trip was centered around 3 teenage boys wisecracking and making jokes and riding roller coasters. It was amazing. We also stayed at Kalahari, ate some good food, did some mini golf, other typical vacation things. It was a great weekend for all of us. And the huge thing here, I got 2 trimless rides on Steel Vengeance, my current favorite coaster. It's a little worse without the trims, but the trimless rides I got in this in row 3 and row 5 were utterly amazing. Stunning. I was breathless on the brake run. The trip, overall, excellent. And even including the time spent out of Cedar Point at Kalahari, or going to, like I said, local restaurants that we know are good from being in the area so much, and doing mini golf and other touristy things. Overall, a fun time. This trip is one of my favorites to Cedar Point, but I do feel like there's a good chance this can be easily surpassed if I bring more friends, or bring a larger party, or stay later to ride more things, or go on a less busy day, because it was a Saturday, I believe, we went on. But this trip is super awesome. Oh, and my friend also has me on video saying something very stupid that I will not say. And now here's where things get a little juicy. Number 3, Hersheypark, June of 2015. This is the only entry from 2015 to make it on the list. This was an interesting and tumultuous year for me in terms of coasters. I did go to Cedar Point, over Georgia, St. Louis, Hersheypark, Kings Island, a lot of stuff. And this is the only one that stuck out that year. It was me, my grandfather, and my older cousin, who rarely attends family trips as of late, which makes it all the more worth. We spent 3 days in Hershey. It was super rainy on the first day we got there, though, so we went to Chocolate World instead, which was fun and got to have some basically fresh from the factory Hershey's Kisses, which were probably some of the best Hershey's chocolates I've ever eaten. The second day we spent riding and re-riding some coasters, including a historical moment for me. Riding Storm Runner over and over again because it was super awesome, and it helped me overcome my fear and embrace riding launch coasters, which I had previously been afraid of. And the third day we spent in the water park, getting re-rides on better coasters when we were done, until a rainstorm blew in and also broke my sandal. The trip was excellent, and I really want to visit Hersheypark again as a coaster enthusiast. And especially, this was excellent for my history, excellent for my memory, excellent family time with an older cousin who's become quite distant as of late. And I really want to go back to Hersheypark one day. It's such a good park, and it's my 3rd favorite park of all time, coincidentally lining up with my 3rd favorite visit of all time. This is just an excellent place, and I really want to go back. I just love this thing. Number 2. Now, these two trips that are coming up next have a lot of similarities. You'll see. And I'm going to call out somebody in particular. I want to take this time to call out somebody. I have a friend that I recently made back in the winter, or late fall, early winter. And we've been talking through Discord and whatnot, and have met up a couple times because he's a little further away from my home village. And when I told him that some of my favorite memories of going to Great America, or that I actually, or no, not that. When I told him that I actually enjoy going to Great America alone, he was utterly shocked and felt pity for me, which just was strange because I've always been a person who's relatively introverted. It's nice having company a lot of the time, but sometimes you just kind of need to go at your own pace. If you're alone at Six Flags, you can take 2 hours rest to go or go ride. You can take 2 hours rest if you want. You can go play boardwalk games if you want. You can go ride any flat ride you please. You can go ride the kiddie coaster without embarrassing anyone near you. You can do pretty much anything you want without judgment, unless you tell somebody. And my friend failed to understand how that was enjoyable. And you're going to see a common theme with these next 2 things. So if you're watching this, you know who you are. And I've seen you comment on my videos before. So be prepared, because you're probably going to have a hard time stomaching this. Number 2 is Dollywood of July of 2019. Pretty similar story to Kentucky Kingdom, but this time with a second day. Autocorrect to Hollywood. Dollywood has 2-day tickets that were only $20 more expensive than the base $79 admission. So, the same crowd I went to Kentucky Kingdom with, my younger cousin and my little brother, took the plunge. 3 of us went around, got our credits, and then decided to go have the world-famous cinnamon bread, which I'll get to later, and then left when a rain delay came by. I waited out the rain delay, hung out for another few hours riding coasters like Lightning Rod, Wild Eagle, Thunderhead, and staying around in Wildwood Grove, which is super cool. And the first half of the next day, until another rain delay, I replaced my cousin and my brother with my mother and my grandfather, who were more into the shows and wanted to see what the park was like, because I've heard good things about the theming and the food. And I also got some killer rides on Lightning Rod that day. Which, if I say Lightning Rod 3 times to one of my other friends, the same one I went to Cedar Point with back in 2018, he will probably he'll probably put his fist through my monitor through some kind of telekinetic power and punch me in the jaw. So I won't do that, because he got lightning rodded in its early life. He couldn't ride it because it was broke. Oh, and the best part of this entire visit to these 2 days of this park was not the coasters. It was the freaking cinnamon bread. Dear holy God on this God-forsaken planet, this bread is the single best thing I've ever put in my mouth. I swear to God, it is just impossibly delectable and tasty and flavorful, light, fluffy, yet so jam-packed with everything good in this world. I ate almost 5 loaves in 2 days, which probably puts me at seriously high risk of diabetes and bankruptcy. I remember this vividly because I went up to the lady who was running the counter and with the register, and I asked for a thing and just said, "Hey, I'm from out of town. I've heard good things about this bread. I'm really excited to try this. I don't know how good this can be." And then she said, "Oh, it's amazing. You're gonna love it." And it's just exchanging some pleasantries. And I bought the loaf of bread for me and my little brother and my younger cousin to share. And then when she saw me boomeranging back later that day for a second loaf, she knew, yeah, it was good, wasn't it? And I just couldn't hide my admission of shame, because it was embarrassingly good. Oh, and Wildwood Grove is also the best theme land of any theme park around I've been to, and this includes Disney. I love this park. It's kind of lacking in the ride lineup because it really only has 3 re-rideable rides and maybe a 4th one if you're kind of willing to go to Kiddieland. But more than makes up for it in ambiance, theming, and especially that cinnamon bread. God, it makes me salivate just to think about it. But what could possibly top 2 days at Dollywood with family, with friends, by myself, with ambiance, and with cinnamon bread? I'll tell you right now, it is Carowinds. my visit to Carowinds in August of 2016. These kind of experiences are exactly why I go to amusement parks. Not everything went right this day, but I sure as hell had some of the greatest fun in my life, and I fought like hell to get through it. Numerous rain delays, breakdowns, storms, leaving the park, hand stamps, second day tickets that were completely unintended, being left alone for the first time in my career outside of Great America, just everything I had to get through, but it all meant so much to me. The whole story. I got there at opening and rolled around and got most of the credits until a rain delay came in. Waited out the rain delay, got the final 2 credits in Nighthawk and Intimidator, and then another rain delay came through, so went to lunch with a friend in the area. I went back for more rides with getting a hand stamp, and then just gratefully learned after another rain delay was coming in that a second day ticket would cost me less than $10 by adding it onto my current pass, which I gleefully accepted. Came back on the next day, another cloudy, overcast day with a great chance of rain, and proceeded to have the greatest marathon of my career. My then favorite coaster, and quite possibly still favorite if Steel Vengeance ends up being kind of bad with the trims, Fury 325, I rode 11 times in 2 days, with 10 of them nearly coming in succession, and getting a few rides on basically everything else in the park. Even the Mine Train, the Boomerang, the Wild Mouse, the Aero Corkscrew, the wooden coaster that everyone shits on, and of course, Afterburn and Intimidator. I did so much at this park, and it was so dead. Being able to just get off of Fury, loop back around, climb a flight of stairs, and wait one train in that legendarily fast operation to get another ride on it in a row that I don't have any choice over was just some of the greatest memories I've ever had. And Fury 325 is the favorite coaster among most of my family. I was with my younger cousin, my older cousin, and my younger brother at first, but they left after they decided to not come back for the second day, I should say. They did not choose to come back for the second day. And that's when I got to have some of the greatest fun in my life. I highly doubt a day could come as close to this being as fun, influential, and meaningful as this. Influential because this was the first time my family, especially my mother, who's who's usually the one in charge of my theme park expeditions, trusted me in an amusement park alone other than Great America. Every other trip I usually had to escort around a family member, or I had to I wasn't allowed to go back once the family member I had in tow left, or even one of the parents themselves was in the park. Not this time. I was allowed to wander Carowinds completely alone. And I've been running with that power ever since. Dollywood, Kentucky Kingdom, Great America, eventually Cedar Point and Kings Island, but eventually when I go on my own coaster road trips, I will remember this moment for being that influential. This is why I'm in this hobby. I chase after days like these, and I do what I love and always will. Always. Redundancies. And with that, that's the end of this video. I really hope you guys have enjoyed. I want to take more of a positive light because of this whole COVID thing messing up a trip that I had planned since last fall, and even had the hotels booked for since the winter. It was unfortunate that it happened, but I've seen people have probably been through worse. My father had a trip to London postponed by an entire year because of the hit to our finances, and among other things. And another family member had to self-isolate coming back from Vietnam, which that was interesting, being 2 weeks out of work in a big house. So just, I'm not the bad. I wasn't hit the worst by this, but I definitely was hit pretty hard. And just because there's people who suffered greater out there does not negate my own suffering in a smaller context. Might sound selfish, that's why I say a smaller context, because my suffering is nothing compared to those who've lost entire businesses or entire empires or whatever. But I've lost quite a bit for Pete to talk about with my friends and to relate to with some people. But yeah, with that all out of the way, I feel a lot better now talking about this whole theme park thing. This is some of the greatest days of my career, and I really hope to have more days like this. I want to mention a few things as well, because there's some things that people might consider. Why wasn't this in your top 10, if you really ask? My trip to California was pretty scuffed because my grandfather was particularly moody, and I had a lot of clashes with him. Plus, Magic Mountain had a lot of operation issues the day I went. Silverdar City is an amazing park, but I decided not to include it because we barely spent any time there, and I didn't get enough chances to experience or ride nearly much of anything. Cedar Point in 2016 and 2015, especially the 2016 visit, helped me. I rode Top Thrill Dragster and crossed that barrier for the first time in 6 years. But definitely, it wasn't influential enough besides crossing that barrier and polishing off the rest of the credits at Cedar Point. And Cedar Point 2015, getting a Zen ride in the front row of Raptors, but chose for me to be a coaster enthusiast. But other than that moment, it was just generally unremarkable, especially choosing not to ride Top Thrill Dragster again. But I've been on several other trips to several other parks. Others just didn't stand up as well. Six Flags America, St. Louis, over Georgia, Mini Valley Fair. Sometimes they just felt like business. But I've learned as of late how to make the most out of theme parks I go to, and just generally take in the ambience when I have nothing better to do. Take advantage of the free soda as well if I get cups, especially at Six Flags parks. And I really hope that, especially with, hopefully when I eventually get back to university, as my university is confirmed to congregate in the summer, I really wish I'm really trying to push to go to Six Flags St. Louis, which I can get my roller coaster fixed for the first time since December. It's been almost 6 months since I've last been on a roller coaster. Help me. And on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Like I said, if you did, feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscription. It does mean something to me, especially if you want to bask in the positivity instead of looking at the negatives like I did. And as always, stay home if possible. Stay safe. I don't want all of you getting any diseases. I don't want any of you getting any diseases. And I hope you guys have a great insert unit of time here. And as always, after saying "and" very many times,